What happens when the very person you look down on quietly becomes the one who holds the keys to your world? This is the story of how a simple woman, mocked by an elite manager, flipped the script and changed everything forever. It was a busy evening in the heart of the city. The streets sparkled with lights, and expensive cars moved slowly past the tall buildings. One of those buildings had a grand sign in front that said Le Magnifique, a restaurant known for its luxury, exclusiveness, and high-class customers. Inside, soft music played, glasses clinked, and waiters in crisp uniforms moved quickly but gracefully across the room. Everything in that place was meant to look perfect, from the golden chandeliers to the marble floors. Among the many footsteps that walked past the restaurant that day, there was one pair that was quiet and slow. A woman in a simple cotton sari walked up to the entrance. She wasn't dressed like the usual guests of Le Magnifique. Her hair was neatly tied in a bun, and her sandals looked worn out. Her hands held a small purse close to her chest. Didn't look poor, but she didn't look rich either. Her clothes didn't have any brand tags. Her jewelry was plain. Her face had no makeup, just a calm expression and quiet eyes. As she reached the entrance, a young doorman looked at her in confusion. For a moment, he wasn't sure whether to open the door or ask her to leave. Before he could decide, the woman smiled gently and nodded, as if asking permission to enter. The doorman, still confused but not rude, slowly opened the glass door. The woman walked inside. Inside the restaurant, heads turned. Most of the guests were dressed in formal suits, designer dresses, and shiny accessories. They glanced at the woman and then looked away, pretending not to stare, but their eyes had already judged her. A waiter near the reception desk noticed her walking in and rushed to inform the manager, Rohan Myra. The manager of Le Magnifique was known for two things: his charm and his arrogance. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly and carried a leather notebook in one hand. His hair was slicked back and his shoes shone like mirrors. He believed that image was everything. He looked at the guests like they were gold coins, and he looked at the staff like they were chess pieces. He had worked his way up from a floor waiter and now ruled the place with a smooth smile and cold eyes. The waiter whispered something into Rohan's ear. Rohan's eyes quickly scanned the entrance, where the woman now stood near the front desk. He narrowed his eyes, then gave a small laugh, as if the situation was funny. He walked up to the woman with a forced smile and a curious look. "Yes, madam," he asked politely, but his voice had a layer of sarcasm under the sweetness. "How may we help you today?" The woman looked up at him, calm and unbothered. "I would like a table for one, please," she said in a soft voice. Rohan raised one eyebrow. He looked her up and down again, slowly, as if he was scanning a piece of furniture at a roadside market. "I'm afraid we are fully booked, madam," he said, still smiling. "Our restaurant follows a strict dress code as well. It's part of our policy." She glanced around the restaurant. More than 5 tables were clearly empty, and one waiter was even standing idle. She didn't point it out, she didn't argue. Instead, she just gave a small nod. "I see," she said quietly. Rohan tilted his head, expecting her to question or beg. When she didn't, he added with a grin, "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the local cafes nearby. They serve simple food, nothing too ... refined." Another waiter standing behind the desk looked uncomfortable. He had seen the empty tables too. A few other staff members watched silently, unsure if they should interfere, but no one said a word. Rohan was the boss here, and people were afraid of losing their jobs. The woman didn't respond to the insult. She simply looked around the restaurant once more at the walls, the art, the corners, the bar, the staff, and the customers. Her eyes scanned the room with the quiet attention of someone who was memorizing everything, not judging it. Again smiled gently and said, "Thank you for your time." She turned and walked out as calmly as she had entered. No drama, no anger, just a silent exit. The doorman opened the door again, this time with a look of guilt in his eyes. He wanted to say something, but the woman didn't give him the chance. She walked down the steps and disappeared into the evening crowd. Inside, Rohan laughed and turned to the nearby waiter. This place is not for people who walk in from the street wearing cotton and carrying their world in a purse," he said jokingly. A couple of staff members laughed with him, though it was nervous laughter. Some felt guilty, but none of them dared to speak. One of the junior waitresses, Maya, whispered to her colleague, "Did you see how she handled it? No tears, no shouting, just walked away with dignity." Her colleague nodded but kept quiet. Rest of the evening passed like usual. Wine was poured, steak was served, music played, and guests left generous tips. But something about that short visit had left a strange feeling in the air. No one could explain it. The woman hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't even complained. And yet the entire scene felt wrong. Outside the restaurant, Anetias, that was her name, walked to a quiet spot near a taxi stand and sat down on a bench. She opened her small purse and took out a folded piece of paper. It was a legal document, with seals and signatures. It had her name and the name of the restaurant group that owned Le Magnifique and several others across the country. Anita had come to the city a week earlier, after her uncle's death. He had been the founder and owner of the restaurant chain, kind, generous man who believed in treating people with respect, whether they were millionaires or delivery boys. Before he passed away, he had chosen Anita as his heir, not because she had experience in business, she didn't, but because she had heart. He had trusted her to carry on his values. Anita had chosen to visit the restaurant without revealing her identity because she wanted to see it with her own eyes. How things were running, how people were being treated. Her uncle had told her once, "If you want to know the truth about any place, don't go as the owner, go as a stranger." Oh, she had done just that. And what she had found was disappointing, but not surprising. She had seen how people like Rohan used charm to hide cruelty, how judgment replaced service, and how a place built with love could become cold under the wrong hands. Anita didn't feel sad or angry. She felt sure. She now knew what she had to do. She folded the paper, placed it back in her purse, and stood up. She looked one last time at the tall building with its glowing sign. It was still full of people who had no idea that the woman they just turned away was the person who now owned it. But soon they would know. And when they did, things would never be the same. The night after Anita quietly left Le Magnifique, the restaurant buzzed with its usual air of class. The smell of grilled lamb, rich sauces, and fine wines floated through the halls. Guests sat comfortably in their chairs, laughing softly, unaware of what had just happened earlier that evening. But among the staff, whispers had already started to move like a slow fire. One of the junior waiters, Stamir, who had seen everything, leaned toward another waiter named Kavya and quietly said, "That woman." Something about her felt different. Kavya nodded. She didn't argue even once. She just looked around the place like she already knew it. They didn't say anything more, but the thought stayed in their minds. Rohan, the manager, seemed completely unaffected. In fact, he felt proud. After the incident with Anita, he told a group of waiters, "Always trust your eyes. You can tell what kind of people belong here. We're not a dhaba. This is fine dining." He laughed at his own words and walked off. Adjusting his coat collar in the mirror, Rohan believed that his judgment was perfect. To him, expensive clothes, branded accessories, and polished shoes were the marks of respectability. He had trained the staff not just in customer service, but in recognizing high-value clients. What he didn't know was that he had made the biggest mistake of his career. Far away from the restaurant, Anita sat quietly in her hotel room. The room was simple and cozy, nothing like the luxury suites in high-end hotels. She wasn't someone who enjoyed showing off money or power. Her mind was full of thoughts, memories of her uncle, Mr. Pratap Singh, a soft-spoken man with big dreams. He had built the restaurant group from nothing. Anita remembered sitting on his lap as a child, listening to him talk about flavors, kindness, how every customer should be treated like a guest at home. Her uncle never cared for flashy clothes or high society people. He believed a restaurant's soul was in its warmth, not its gold. When he passed away 2 months ago, Anita was shocked to learn that he had left everything to her. She was not from the business world. She had lived a simple life, working as a school teacher, taking care of her sick mother, and reading books. In the evening? But her uncle had written a letter to her before his death, where he said, "You may not know the restaurant world, but you know the world of people. That's what matters." The legal advisor handling her uncle's will had explained that Anita now owned all 3 restaurants in the group, including the one in the city's elite district, La Magnifique. But Anita had not rushed in to take over. She wanted to see things as they really were. She had always believed that titles and power often change people's behavior. So she decided to walk in as a stranger and let the place show its true colors. And it had. Meanwhile, back at La Magnifique, the staff were cleaning up after closing time. Rohan sat in his glass-walled office with a cup of coffee. He checked his emails, looking for news from the main office. There was a rumor that the owner had passed away, and someone new was taking charge, but no one knew who. Rohan believed he had a strong chance of being promoted to regional manager. He had already updated his resume, and had even prepared a list of changes he would make once he got the position. "I've kept this place running like a machine," he told himself. "Nobody can question my skills." In another corner of the restaurant, Maya, the young waitress, sat folding napkins. She was quiet and thoughtful. Her shift was over, but she didn't want to go home yet. She kept thinking about the woman from earlier. The way she spoke, the way she looked around, not with anger, but with understanding. Maya had once heard a quote that now echoed in her mind. "True power doesn't shout, it observes." That night, many of the staff couldn't sleep well. A strange restlessness hung in the air. They didn't know it yet, but the clock had started ticking toward a big change. The next morning, Nita met with the legal advisor, Mr. Kapoor, in his office. He was an elderly man who had worked with her uncle for over 2 decades. He handed her a file full of ownership documents, staff records, and business reports. "It's all official now, madam," he said. "From today, the restaurants are legally yours." Anita looked at the papers silently. Then she looked up at Mr. Kapoor and said, "I want to understand the people before I take any step. Can you help me visit the other branches too, Mr.?" Kapoor nodded. "Of course, but I must tell you, the one in Sector 7 has lost some of its shine, and the one in the Old Town is struggling with staff behavior complaints. Your uncle had big dreams, but without his presence, things have changed." Anita wasn't surprised. She had already seen what had happened at La Magnifique. It only made her more determined. She spent the next 2 days visiting the other restaurants, quietly observing, listening, and taking mental notes. She saw staff ignoring old customers, chefs cutting corners on recipes, and managers more interested in pleasing rich clients than serving good food. Every time she walked in, she wore the same simple clothes. Some people treated her kindly. Others ignored her. But no one recognized her as the new owner. That's exactly how she wanted it for now. By the end of the week, Anita had a clear picture of the problems. But instead of becoming angry or emotional, she stayed calm. She made a plan. She decided that she would reveal her identity soon, but not through a press release or a dramatic speech. She would return to La Magnifique, quietly, and start from the place where she was insulted. Back at the restaurant, Rohan was feeling more confident than ever. He had just received an email from the head office saying the new owner would soon be visiting all branches. But there was no name mentioned. Probably some rich businessman or investor, he thought. I hope it's someone I can impress. He had no idea that the woman he had mocked just days ago was that very person. Later that day, Rohan called a staff meeting. "Everyone, be on your best behavior this week. Someone from the ownership team might drop by. We don't know when. So stay sharp, keep things classy, and for God's sake, if anyone walks in looking like they belong in a bus stop, don't let them in." There were a few forced laughs, but some faces in the room were serious. Maya, Samir, and Kavya all looked at each other. The image of Anita was still fresh in their minds. Maya finally spoke a little nervously. "But sir, what if they're important?" Rohan gave her a sharp look. "Important people don't wear sandals and cotton saris. Want to trust me." No one replied after that. That night, Maya messaged her friend who worked in another branch. Something big is coming. And she was right. The next morning, Anita received a call from Mr. Kapoor, the head Office has informed all branches that a new owner may visit soon. They don't know it's you yet. It's the perfect time to go back, Anita agreed. She packed her simple purse, wore the same sari, and took an auto rickshaw to the restaurant. This time, though, she carried all the documents proving her ownership in her bag. Her steps were steady, but her eyes held a quiet fire. As she sat in the auto, she looked out at the city. The buildings, the traffic, the noise, it all felt different now. Not because she was richer or more powerful, but because she had seen something clearly: how people hide behind uniforms, how judgment comes before kindness, and how silence can sometimes be louder than words. When she reached the restaurant's entrance again, she saw the same doorman standing outside. This time, he recognized her immediately. His eyes widened a little, and there was shame in his face. He stepped forward quickly and opened the door without hesitation. "Good morning, madam," he said softly. Anita gave him a small smile and walked in. The restaurant was less crowded than before. Some guests sat at their tables chatting. A few waiters moved around with trays, but the moment Anita entered, several staff members recognized her. Their eyes went wide. Samir froze in place. Maya dropped a spoon on a table and quickly picked it up, her heart pounding. They couldn't believe it. The same woman, back again. And with the same calm expression. Rohan hadn't seen her yet. He was at the back reviewing a wine list. One of the waiters rushed to him and whispered something. "What?" Rohan frowned. "Who's here?" When he turned and saw Anita standing near the front desk, he gave an annoyed sigh. Again, he muttered, "Why does she keep coming here?" He walked toward her, ready to ask her to leave again. But before he could speak, Anita looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Good morning, Mr. Rohan Mehra. I'm here to speak to the manager of La Magnifique." Rohan tried to maintain his charm. "Yes, madam, that would be me. How can I help you this time?" She reached into her purse and slowly took out the file. "By reading this," she said calmly, handing it to him. Rohan looked confused. He opened the file casually, thinking it was a complaint letter or feedback form. But the moment he saw the company's seal, the legal stamps, and her name written under owner and legal successor, his hands began to shake slightly. He looked up at her, his mouth open, but no words came out, and then, for the first time, Rohan was speechless. The staff watched from every corner. Silence filled the restaurant like never before. Anita stood still, graceful and firm. She had walked in as a stranger. Now she was standing as the rightful owner, and the storm was only just beginning. For a few long seconds, Rohan stared at the papers in his hands without blinking. The letters blurred in front of his eyes as his brain tried to make sense of what he was reading. His face slowly turned pale, and his confident smile completely disappeared. His fingers trembled slightly as he turned the pages. The restaurant's ownership transfer was written clearly. It had her name, Anita Singh. It had legal stamps, signatures, and seals. There was no doubt anymore. All around them, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Waiters stood frozen. The guests who were nearby looked confused, sensing something unusual. Maya and Samir, who had watched Anita's first visit and remembered the disrespect she had faced, stared at her with wide eyes in surprise. They had not expected this moment to come so soon. Rohan tried to find words. He forced a nervous smile and said, "Ma'am, this must be some kind of misunderstanding. Are you saying you're the new owner?" Anita didn't blink. She looked straight into his eyes and said gently, "Yes, Mr. Mehra, that's exactly what I'm saying. I now own this restaurant, along with the others under the same group." Rohan felt like the ground under his feet had slipped. His chest tightened. All his arrogance, all the confidence he had in judging people by their clothes, all the pride he had taken in running this place, it suddenly felt like a pile of glass shattered in front of him. He tried to smile again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Madam, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "If I had known who you were," Anita raised her hand gently to stop him. Her voice was still calm. "Exactly, you didn't know. And that's the problem." Rohan opened his mouth to speak again, but no words came out. He looked around and realized that all eyes were on him. The very staff who once feared him were now watching silently, waiting to see what would happen next. Anita turned slightly and looked around the restaurant. "This is a beautiful place," she said softly. "My uncle built it with love and care. He believed that good food must be served with respect, not with judgment." She paused for a moment and then added, "But I came here the other day, dressed simply, without showing off my money or power, and I was treated like I didn't belong. Not because I was rude, not because I broke any rule, but because I didn't look like your idea of a worthy customer." Rohan tried again. "Ma'am, I was only following the policy. We have a dress code, a standard. This is a high-end restaurant. We get VIPs, celebrities, foreign diplomats. We need to maintain that image." Anita looked at him thoughtfully. "And who decides what that image should be? Is kindness only for people who wear suits? Is respect only for those who arrive in expensive cars?" He had no answer. He stared at the floor, wishing he could go back and erase the moment he had mocked her. Just then, Anita turned to the staff members nearby and said, "Can we all sit down for a short meeting? I think it's time we talked honestly. Please. Gather everyone." Within minutes, the staff formed a circle near the center of the restaurant. The waiters, chefs, cleaning staff, receptionist. Seven, the doorman, stood quietly, unsure of what to expect. Anita didn't stand on a stage or raise her voice. She simply took a chair and sat among them. "I'm not a businesswoman," she began, "and I don't have experience running restaurants, but I do know how it feels to be treated unfairly. And I know that good businesses are not built on luxury. They are built on people-honest people who work hard and treat others with respect." She looked around at all of them. This restaurant was started with that idea, and somewhere along the way, we lost it. Maya, who had been watching with tears in her eyes, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I remember the day you came. I wanted to say something, but I was afraid. I'm so sorry." Anita gave her a kind smile. "You did nothing wrong. You were kind, even in silence. That matters." Samir also spoke. "You've been told to turn away people who don't look rich. But sometimes, those people are the kindest, the most grateful. We feel guilty, but we're told it's policy." Anita listened carefully. "From today, that policy ends," she said. "From now on, this restaurant will welcome everyone, whether they wear silk or cotton, whether they come in a car or on foot. The only rule we will follow is respect." There was a quiet cheer among the staff. Some clapped. Few had tears in their eyes. For the first time in a long time, they felt like their work mattered beyond money. Then Anita stood up and looked at Rohan. "As for you, Mr. Mehra," she said gently but firmly, "I will need to review your actions closely. You're not being fired today, but you are no longer the manager. You will take a leave starting now, and the team will be led by someone else for the time being." Rohan looked shocked. "Ma'am, please. I've worked here for 7 years. I made this place what it is." "You made it look fancy," Anita replied, "but you also made it cold. My uncle wanted this place to have heart. You removed that heart." He had no choice but to nod. He walked away quietly, ashamed. The staff watched as their once feared manager left the restaurant, not with pride, but with silence. Anita then turned to the others and said, "I won't be here every day, but I will be watching. I want to rebuild what was lost, and I'll need your help." Over the next few hours, Anita walked through every part of the restaurant. She met the chefs, listened to their ideas, tasted the food, and praised the junior cook for his creative new dessert. She checked the kitchen's cleanliness, asked about staff working hours, and even helped wipe down a table when one waiter was overloaded. Word spread quickly. Guests who had witnessed the change began to speak with excitement. Took videos. By the next day, social media was buzzing with the story of a simple woman who turned out to be the new owner. Posts went viral. Some people wrote comments like, "True boss lady," and "Humility meets power." Others shared their own experiences of being judged in fancy places and how they wished more owners were like Anita. By evening, newspapers and websites picked up the story. Anita received messages from across the country, some from customers, others from small business owners who were inspired by her calm but powerful leadership. Meanwhile, Rohan sat in his apartment, staring at the ceiling. His phone kept buzzing. With texts from old colleagues, he didn't open any. He kept thinking of how he had looked down on someone because of their clothes. He realized now that his pride had blinded him. He remembered every word Anita had said, stung more because she had spoken with grace, not anger. That night, Anita sat in her hotel room again. But this time her heart was lighter. She looked at her uncle's photo beside the bed and whispered, "I hope I did right by you." Over the next few days, changes began to show. Customers who once felt ignored were now treated warmly. New training sessions were held for staff to focus on kindness and equality. A feedback box was added where customers could share their experiences. Anita also decided to create a small fund to support the education of employees' children. One afternoon, an elderly man wearing a simple kurta walked into the restaurant. The staff, now trained differently, welcomed him with the same respect they showed to everyone else. He had a peaceful lunch and quietly left. Later, the staff found out he was a retired judge who wrote a glowing review of the restaurant online. Slowly but surely, Le Magnifique began to change, not in its decoration, but in its heart. It still had beautiful lights, soft music, and fine dishes. But now it also had warmth. Laughter returned. Smiles became genuine. Staff began to feel proud of where they worked, not because it looked rich, but because it now felt right. Anita didn't take credit for any of it. She kept visiting quietly, talking to staff, guiding them, and reminding them that real success wasn't measured by profit margins, but by the way people felt when they walked through the door. The journey was just beginning. But already, the seeds of change had been planted, and it all started because one woman had the courage to walk into a place that didn't welcome her, and the grace to forgive those who judged her. A few weeks had passed since Anita had taken over the restaurant, but it already felt like a completely different place. The atmosphere had changed. Where there was once coldness and judgment, now there was warmth and kindness. Staff members smiled more often. They greeted guests with honesty, not out of fear or habit, but because they wanted to. The rules hadn't disappeared, but now they made sense. The heart of the restaurant had come alive again. Anita didn't visit every day, but whenever she came, she spent time not just in the office, but also in the kitchen, the service area, and the guest lounge. She listened more than she spoke. She asked questions, took notes, and observed silently. Her presence was calm and respectful, but people felt her strength in every decision she made. One afternoon, Anita came in quietly and sat in a corner. The restaurant was half full, and she noticed something interesting. A young couple had walked in wearing simple clothes. Nothing flashy, no designer brands. Just ordinary people. The hostess smiled warmly and seated them without hesitation. Anita smiled to herself. Just weeks ago, the same couple might have been judged or turned away. Now, they were being treated like any other guests, exactly how it should be. After their meal, the young man walked over to the counter and asked for the manager. "We just wanted to say thank you," he told the assistant manager. "A kind woman named Nisha. We've been saving up for a special dinner, and we were a bit nervous coming here. But you made us feel welcome, and the food was amazing." "Ah!" smiled. "You're always welcome here, sir. We're just happy you enjoyed it." Anita watched the exchange quietly. It warmed her heart, but she knew there was still a lot of work to be done. Later that evening, she called a staff meeting. Everyone gathered around in the lounge area. Even the chefs came out of the kitchen, wiping their hands on aprons. "I've seen some wonderful changes," Anita began, "and I want to thank each one of you. You've shown me that change is possible when people work together." The team clapped softly, but Anita held up her hand. "But we must not stop here. Change is not just about one restaurant. It's about the people inside it. We still have challenges to face." "Oh." She turned toward the assistant manager. "Nisha, how's the training program going?" Nisha nodded. "We've completed 2 full sessions, one on guest interaction and another on conflict resolution. Staff is responding well. I've also started 101 meetings with new hires." "Good," Anita said. "Let's keep building." Want to introduce a new idea. Everyone leaned in, curious. I want to create a Guest of the Month program, she explained.
Not for celebrities or rich clients.
But for someone who shows humility, kindness, or appreciation. A guest who reminds us why we do what we do. The team seemed surprised but excited. Maya, one of the waitresses, smiled. Ma'am, I think that's a beautiful idea. It will help people feel seen. Anita nodded, and not just that. It will remind us to notice the quiet people. 2. The ones who don't shout for attention but who carry dignity in their silence. Meanwhile, news of the restaurant's transformation was spreading. One popular food blogger visited secretly and wrote a long emotional post about the new vibe. It's not just the food that's delicious, she wrote, but the feeling of being valued, no matter who you are. That post went viral and brought a fresh wave of guests soon. Local newspapers wanted to interview Anita, but she politely declined most of them. She didn't want fame. Her only goal was to make the restaurant a place where everyone felt at home, but not everyone was happy. Rohan, the former manager, had been watching from a distance. His pride was wounded, and though he had agreed to step away, he was still struggling inside. For years, he had believed that success was about appearances rich, clients, expensive wine, celebrity photos on the wall. He couldn't understand how the same place was now earning praise by doing the exact opposite. One evening, he sent Anita a message asking to meet. They sat in a quiet cafe near the park. Rohan looked tired and defeated. He didn't carry the same arrogant air he once had. Anita ordered tea and waited for him to speak. I've been thinking a lot, he said finally. I've made mistakes. I was blind to the values your uncle stood for. I turned this place into something cold. I'm not proud of it. Anita listened without interrupting. I didn't respect people who didn't look a certain way, he continued. But now I see your idea of respect is not based on clothes or money. It's based on heart. Anita sipped her tea. Everyone makes mistakes, Rohan. What matters is whether we learn from them. He looked down. I want to do better. I don't expect you to give me back my position. But if there's any way I can help, even from the side, I'd be grateful. Anita thought for a moment. There is a way. I'm planning to open a training center for hospitality workers. It's not just for our restaurant, but for others too. It's a place where people learn not only skills, but values. Maybe you can help design the program. Rohan looked surprised. You'd trust me with that? I believe people can change if they truly want to, Anita said calmly. He nodded, and something in his eyes shifted, a spark of sincerity that had been missing for a long time. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, things continued to evolve. The Guest of the Month idea was launched. The first person chosen was an elderly woman named Mrs. D'Souza, who always came alone and left. Generous tips for the waiters. She had once been ignored in another fancy place, but here she was treated with such care that she returned every week. When Anita gave her the certificate in a bouquet, she cried softly and said, "No one's ever honored me like this before." Moments like these became more frequent. A disabled student who came with his caregiver was greeted with a custom dish designed just for him. A father celebrating his daughter's small victory in a school quiz found a free dessert sent by the chef with a handwritten note. "We celebrate with you." The staff felt proud. Not because they served VIPs, but because they touched hearts. Anita began noticing something else too. Her uncle's dream wasn't just alive, it was growing. Other restaurant owners began visiting her, asking for advice. One man said, "How did you turn things around without changing the menu or the prices?" Anita smiled. "We changed the heart, not the table." But deep inside, Anita carried one sadness. Wished her uncle had lived to see this change. One evening, she went back to his old house, now quiet and dusty. She sat by his favorite chair, holding a photo of him smiling. "I hope I'm doing it right," she whispered. "I'm not perfect, but I'm trying." She spent the night there, thinking about the future. She wanted to expand the idea, not by opening more branches, but by creating a network of restaurants that believed in kindness-first service. Not a chain, but a circle of places that valued people. The next morning, she called a few trusted staff members and shared the idea. They were excited. Nisha, the assistant manager, said, "That would be revolutionary, ma'am." Restaurant movement. Based on human dignity, Anita smiled. "It may take time, but I believe we can do it. One restaurant, one guest, one smile at a time." As the sun rose outside the old house, Anita stood in the balcony and looked out at the quiet road. Life had changed so much from the day she was mocked for wearing a simple dress to now when she was creating waves in the hospitality industry without chasing fame. But her heart remained the same, simple, grounded, and full of purpose. And while the world was busy chasing perfection, she chose to chase something deeper, humanity. Months passed, and the restaurant that once felt cold and elite had now become one of the most loved places in the city. It wasn't just because of the food or the decorations. It was the feeling that people got when they walked through its doors. A feeling of being welcomed, respected, and appreciated, no matter who they were. Anita had created something special. She hadn't planned it like a big businesswoman. She had simply followed her heart and her uncle's values. People felt that in every part of the restaurant, from the way the waiter poured water to the way the chef smiled when guests complimented the food, people started writing letters, emails, and even thank you cards. One card came from a young boy named Arav. He had come with his parents on his birthday. The staff had surprised him with a small chocolate cake and a balloon. He wrote, "Thank you for making me feel like a star. We'll never forget this birthday." Anita kept that card in her office drawer. Whenever she felt tired, she would open it and smile. But even as everything seemed to be going perfectly, Anita knew that life always has a way of testing people. One evening, a large group came in for a reservation. They were rich businessmen and their wives, all dressed in designer clothes, expensive watches, and high heels. The restaurant was busy, but the staff gave them their best attention. Among the group was a woman named Priya, who had once been Anita's classmate. She didn't recognize Anita right away. When Anita walked past their table to check on the guests, Priya stared for a moment and then gasped. "Wait a second," she said loudly. "Aren't you Anita?" "From our college batch, a quiet girl, who always wore the same dress." The table laughed politely. Priya continued, "I never thought I'd see you here. What are you doing now? Managing the floor?" Anita smiled politely. "Something like that," she said. Priya wasn't satisfied. "Wow. I mean, no offense, but you really did disappear after college. Never thought you'd end up in a restaurant." Anita kept her tone calm. "It's good to see you, Priya. Hope you're enjoying the evening." She didn't feel angry, but there was a strange sadness inside her. Not because of Priya's words, but because some people still believed that dignity depended on status. Later, when the bill came, one of the businessmen asked to meet the owner. "We're very impressed," he said. "We'd love to meet the person behind this." Priya smirked and said, "It's probably some old businessman or a foreign investor." Anita returned to the table, this time with Nisha. The businessman stood up and shook hands with Anita. "So, you're the one running this place?" Anita smiled. "Yes, I'm the owner." For a moment, the whole table went silent. Priya looked stunned. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The confidence she had moments ago disappeared. "I took over the restaurant after my uncle passed away," Anita added calmly. "It was his dream. I'm just trying to keep it alive." The businessman was impressed. "You've done something? Amazing. Your staff is well-trained, the food is excellent, and most of all, it feels warm here." Priya tried to speak again. I had no idea. That's incredible." Anita gave a gentle smile. "It's okay, Priya. We all start somewhere." That night, Anita sat in her car for a few minutes before going home. She didn't cry, but her eyes felt heavy. It wasn't about showing Priya who she had become. It was about realizing how far she had come without changing who she was. She remembered that day when Rohan had insulted her at the entrance, calling her not suitable for the place. And now, that same place was her responsibility, her creation, her legacy. In the following weeks, something unexpected happened. A young girl named Mira came to the restaurant looking for a job. She was shy, dressed in simple clothes, and spoke softly. Anita sat with her in the small interview room. "Why do you want to work here?" Anita asked. Mira looked nervous. "Because I heard this is a place where people don't get judged for who they are." Anita looked at her carefully. Mira reminded her of herself years ago, quiet, unsure, but full of dreams. "You're hired," Anita said simply. "But remember, the most important skill here is kindness. Do you think you can offer that?" Nodded, her eyes bright. Soon, Mira became one of the most loved staff members. She would serve elderly guests with extra care, always check if children were enjoying their food, and help clean without being told. She told Anita once, "I've never felt so safe in a job before." Anita knew this was the real success, not awards or money, but creating a space where people felt safe and respected. Meanwhile, Rohan had kept his promise. He worked hard on developing a training program for hotel staff across the city. He invited Anita to the launch event. When she arrived, he introduced her as the woman who taught me what real leadership looks like. Anita didn't enjoy the spotlight, but she was happy to know her values were spreading beyond one building. She spoke softly but clearly too. "The audience. If we train people to be polite only when the guest is rich, we're failing. True service is when you treat everyone with the same respect even if they walk in wearing simple clothes, or speak with hesitation, or don't know which spoon to use. That's when you know your heart is in the right place." The audience gave her a standing ovation. A few months later, Anita decided to open a small cafe next to the restaurant, not for profit, but as a space where students, artists, and workers could come without pressure. She called it Uncle's Table. Anyone could walk in, order a tea or a sandwich, and stay as long as they liked. Books were placed on shelves. There was even a wall where people could write anonymous messages, stories or dreams. One message said, "I came here feeling lost. Now I feel seen." Another said, "I don't have money, but I have hope. Thank you for letting me sit here." Anita read every message. One evening, a homeless man walked into the cafe. The staff served him without asking questions, sat quietly for hours, sipping tea and reading a book from the shelf. When he left, he placed a torn note on the counter. It said, "This was the first time in years someone treated me like I mattered. Thank you." That night, Anita stood in the empty cafe, lights dim, music soft. She whispered to herself, "This is what I was meant to do." Wasn't rich in the way people counted money, but she was wealthy in a different way, in stories, in lives touched, in hearts warmed. One morning, she received a letter by post. It was from a woman in a nearby city. The letter read, "Dear Anita, I don't know you personally, but I visited. Your restaurant last week was going through a very hard time. I had just lost my job. I came in just to eat one last meal before going back to my village. The way your staff treated me, the smile of the waiter, the soft music, it gave me peace. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a failure. Thank you for giving me strength through a simple meal." Anita folded the letter and placed it in a wooden box she had kept in her office. The box now had dozens of such letters. She called it her treasure chest. She continued to run the restaurant not as a business, but as a mission. The staff grew closer like a family. They laughed together, learned from each other, and stood by one another. And sometimes, when Anita walked through the restaurant in her simple cotton dress, guests still mistook her for a regular staff member. They would ask, "Can you get us some water?" or "Where's the menu?" She always smiled and said, "Of course," without ever revealing who she was, because she didn't need to prove anything anymore. She had already proven that humility is not weakness, simplicity is not shameful, and that true class is how you treat others. And as the restaurant lights glowed softly every evening, they told a quiet story. A story of a woman who was once mocked for not fitting in, but who ended up building a place where everyone could belong, not with power, not with pride, but with purpose. And in that purpose, she found her peace.